Declan Doyle, Anthony Weaver, and Anthony Levine Sr. spoke for the first time as Baltimore Ravens coordinators, and they made a heck of a first impression.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens content and coverage for you on the show here. Now we're twice a day as well. We got the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, as well as a check-in episode, which is 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is a more mini episode of the show. So twice daily here on Locked On Ravens. And on today's show, we got to hear Declan Doyle, Anthony Weaver, and Anthony Levine Sr. Speak at their first press conference as Baltimore Ravens coordinators. And I thought they had a lot of great messages and felt like they were all really aligned. So I want to talk about, we'll just go down the list. We'll talk about Declan Doyle, the first part of the show, Anthony Weaver in the second part of the show, and then Anthony Levine Sr. in the final part of the show, and what their visions are, what their expectations are, why they took the jobs, and opening up on their journeys to their situation. So I'm really excited for what we have to talk about because I was excited watching this entire thing. So pumped up to talk about it. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. Well, I thought Declan Doyle was really interesting. We'll start with him, obviously, and go down the list. Q and I, Kadri Ismail, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver. We talked about Declan and his appearance on the lounge yesterday. And, he kind of said a lot of the same things. Well, at least some of the same things. But one of the things that caught my eye, or I guess ears, at first, is something that he did mention on the lounge in a way, where he said that the non-negotiable three pillars for the Ravens offense are going to be physical, detailed, and explosive. And, talked about on the lounge how he wanted to hunt those explosive plays, 12-plus yard gains, 16-plus yard gains. You saw what they did in Chicago in 2025. And again, it was a first-time offense with Ben Johnson there. Doyle wasn't calling the plays, but again, he was like the guy in that offense that was helping things along while Ben Johnson obviously had final say in things. But that Chicago offense was the third best rushing offense in the league and the 10th best passing offense in the league. They were a top 10 offense across the board. They were ninth in scoring, sixth in yards. I mean, the big thing that I liked, though, about not only what Declan Doyle had to say, but again, what the product on the field that we saw from Declan Doyle in that offense last season was the Bears were number one in turnovers in a good way. Like, they had the least turnovers in the NFL on offense with just 11 last season. So they weren't giving the opposing defenses the opportunity to take the ball away. They weren't giving the ball back to the opposing offense and putting their defense behind the eight ball. And that's something that we saw at times this Ravens offense do. And so the execution plan that Declan Doyle has for these guys, I'm super pumped up about it because, I mean, you can truly tell, like, the attention to detail that Declan Doyle had in his answers, and a really big part of the process for him talking both on the lounge and in this press conference is that he's excited to not only get to work. One of the things that, I guess the thing that attracted him to this job in Baltimore, he said, was being the last guy to see it, articulating the vision, being able to sell that to the players, and ultimately being able to call the plays on game day was what attracted me to this opportunity, is what Declan Doyle had to say. So again, he's only 29 years old, right? And you can say, oh, well, that's not a lot of experience. That's great. But no, he does. Q and I talked about that this morning. He does have a lot of experience. I mean, he's been around a lot of great coaches, and you can, at least from what I could take away and from what I could tell, he's someone that I think is going to have a lot of fun with this Ravens offense and is going to have a lot of fun with Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, Declan spoke glowingly of Lamar and, said a couple of things about how they were talking throughout this entire process, which we're actually going to get into a little bit later in the day here, where, there was dialogue with Lamar and Declan Doyle and those guys talking X's and O's and the whole 9 yards. So, we'll see about that. But one of the big things with Declan that I liked that he mentioned in this press conference about Lamar was the fact that Lamar, a defense has to defend 2 plays with him on every play. And, talked about how you have to try to stop that designed play, but then, you have that second act stuff that Lamar does that you're like, all right, and I've said this, right? Half the battle with Lamar is getting to him. The other half is actually bringing him down. And again, like the quote that first play can be more consistent at times with his eyes, his footwork within the system. That's what I've noticed as we've watched the tape, that stuff. That as soon as he gets in here, I'm really fired up to sit with him and start to talk through a lot of that stuff because you don't always get the full picture until you're sitting with a player and talking about how you're being coached and what you're supposed to be looking at. Once you start having that dialogue, that's where the progress exists, right? That's a big thing. He's erasing and he's able to chase more explosive games. With Caleb, we found the same thing. So it's similar, right? Obviously, Caleb Williams is not Lamar Jackson, right? I'm not trying to say that. No one should be trying to say that. But again, it's the similarities of what Declan Doyle has worked with in the past of like, hey, Caleb can escape and make other plays. Well, now you can take that to a whole nother level with Lamar Jackson, work that to within your system. And I think that is really, really interesting to me. It's something that, again, we all know. It's not like some breaking news, but, the fact that Declan Doyle put an emphasis on that, finding explosive plays. Because sometimes, like, Pittsburgh game, right? When 2 guys came essentially free to Lamar Jackson, Lamar had to escape, improvise, and there was that long score to Zay. Like, those are the types of plays where sometimes your most explosive plays do come within the system of your offense and the framework. But some of them come when it's just all gone crazy. And you're like, all right, well, this is so far from what we've been working with and what our game plan was. But Lamar does that where he's rolling out, he escapes pressure, and he finds something down the field that wouldn't have been there if he wasn't able to do that. So I'm excited to see what Doyle can do that, especially with just getting Lamar out on the move and having him throw from the pocket too. We know he can do both. We know he's very effective in both of those things. But, in my opinion, the Ravens have a lot of fun that they can have with Declan Doyle and Lamar Jackson. And I see the comment. I love the fact that Doyle's trying to get his offense to start working towards the season early. That's another thing that was very talked about. Well, I guess not very, but it was asked to Declan Doyle about, expectations, about voluntary OTAs. And, he noted the fact that it is voluntary, but did say the expectation for him is that guys will be there for voluntary OTAs. And again, it is voluntary, right? It kind of goes back to the conversations we have every single season about, okay, like, yes, it's great if everybody's there, but it is voluntary. And I personally never dock anybody, for not being there because it is voluntary. But I mean, Declan Doyle he almost said what I think about the situation. I think he put it really well. He said, quote, if you want to say that you have championship standards and those are your goals and expectations, certainly that's going to take work. That's going to take collaboration. That's going to take the beginning of building the relationship, starting off this next regime on the right foot. And I think it is, it's more important than previous seasons for guys to come in for voluntary OTAs. Again, it is voluntary. So, it's not like it's mandatory and you're going to get in trouble if you skip. Like, it's required to be there. No, it's voluntary. But with John Harbaugh in that system, I mean, you knew what was there somewhat. When Todd Monken came in, it was a little different. You got to learn that system. When Zach Orr takes over from Mike McDonald, what is he going to do? But this is an entirely new group, right? An entirely new group, an entirely new coaching staff. And so, yeah, if there was a year for guys to show up to voluntary OTAs, it would be this one. And, I'm glad that Declan is very no words held back saying, yeah, I expect our guys to be there. That's the expectation. Now, again, I don't think they're going to get in trouble, and they're not going to get in trouble if they're not there because it's voluntary. But I do think that it is more important than it has been for sure in previous seasons for guys, as many guys as possible, to be there for voluntary OTAs. So that's a long ways away. Again, we're still months away from that happening. April 6th was the day that Jesse Minter, and that April day was where Jesse Minter was kind of going with his conversation, what he was excited about. So yeah, I mean, I'm pumped for Declan and what he brings to the table here for Baltimore. And again, had a lot of praise about Lamar. He said his willingness to listen, his hunger to learn, his hunger to grow. He's a guy with a growth mindset. Talked about in the lounge how he wants to go out there and try to call plays on the field and in the booth. Says there's pros and cons to both. This, he didn't talk about this, in a ton of detail, but said that he talked to Lamar about it for a little bit. This again over on the lounge. So I'm interested to see what she ends up doing, because obviously on the field you're more with the players, but I guess in the booth you got more of that skybox view. So I'm interested about that. But yeah, Declan was great. Again, I thought he got his points across really well, very detailed, set clear standards for this offense. And I think for me, the fact that he was able to get his point across in the ways that he did, or his points across in the ways that he did, I thought it was awesome to hear that. It was refreshing. I talked about it this morning, right? It's a refreshing perspective on what this offense can be, because we know that they already have a high floor, right? We understand that is the Ravens offense is extremely talented. They have the players, Lamar, Henry, Flowers, you add some offensive linemen to that conversation. There's a lot to like, but at the same time, we know that they can be better. We know that they have an opportunity to get these guys in position to, you're already elite. Well, now you can be even more elite. And that's what I think everybody wants. So coming up with the second part of the show, we'll flip over to the defensive side of the ball, talk about what Anthony Weaver had to say about his defense. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. All in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Moving along, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you with this instant reaction edition of the show, breaking down what Declan Doyle, Anthony Weaver, and Anthony Levine Sr. had to say during their opening, or I guess introductory press conference as Baltimore Ravens coordinators. Appreciate everybody again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And again, we are now twice daily. We still are a daily show Monday through Friday. We have everything for you. We now have two shows for you every single day. Obviously, our regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. That's the big 30 to 36-minute show. 3 segments, but now we have Locked On Ravens check-ins or Locked On Ravens PM or minis. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm trying to call it, but that's going to be 2 segments, about 10 to 16 minutes, and I'm pumped that we're doing that, along with all of our other content, like our bonus episodes on the weekends and our instant reaction shows like this after breaking news and during games. We also have watch-alongs during games, a squad show twice a week with myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. That's Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, so that'll be later tonight. And then we also have the Everydayer Club, where you get exclusive access to one-on-one text conversations with me. You also get other things as well, like things that really is just extra add-on content. So weekly Q&As and Discord server, et cetera, et cetera. So link to that in the description below, as well as on the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On Ravens website. But let's talk Anthony Weaver now. I'm pumped up. Actually, before we do that, let's do a little, if you're here with us live in the chat, or you're in the comments after the fact, you're in audio form, you want to comment it as well, or message me on social media. After hearing these guys speak, Anthony Weaver, Declan Doyle, Anthony Levine Sr., what is your confidence level in this Ravens coaching staff? And is it any higher than it was? I mean, for me, I couldn't really go much higher on my scale because I already was so confident in them. Like, I loved the hires. Again, I'm not saying that like, oh, these guys are going to come in and they're going to be the best number one in every single category, right? But I truly believe in the vision that these guys have. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, you can put me at like a 9, 9.5. Like I feel very, very confident in what this group is going to be able to do, bringing in the players. So to me, I'm at a 9 or 9.5. That's where I am personally. And I think hearing Anthony Weaver speak about everything, particularly for the defensive side of the ball, like that was a big one for me because he's someone that I I really do believe that with this defense, yes, the standard is going to be, you want to get back to that 2000s defense, right? Like you want to be able to go out there and be that 2000s group, but we can be honest about it. Like it's really hard to achieve that. It's great if you can, like that 2023 defense was awesome. But to me, it's just getting back to great defense first. But if you can take that leap to elites, if you can take that leap to historic, well, it's not impossible. Is it hard? Yeah. But you know what? It takes a lot of hard work. And I feel like Anthony Weaver, based off of his answers, he is willing, and that defense and that coaching staff is willing to put in that work. And so when you look at what Weaver had to say, one of the things that stuck out to me first and foremost was the fact that, he didn't get an opportunity to call plays this year. He didn't get an opportunity to get a head coaching job. And he didn't sugarcoat it. Like he said, it was disappointing he wasn't able to get a head coaching job. But he said, quote, "This job and being with Coach Minter is hardly a consolation prize. Selfishly, I'm in it to try to win a Super Bowl, to be part of a group that's forever." And like that's huge to me. Like the fact that the standards, and that's something Jesse Minter talked about a ton over the course of this press conference, and we're going to get to that a little more over the course of the day and in the next week here, is like there's a clear vision that Jesse Minter has for this team, right? It's being able to set high expectations and high standards with the high expectations that are already from the outside, and then them achieving those and holding themselves accountable for those standards. And it feels like with Anthony Weaver, he's someone that's like, yeah, we're going to go around, we're going to fly around, we're going to have all these things. You heard if you heard his interview in the lounge, that's something he talked about a lot. But you could tell it here in the press conference too, is like, even when talking about the blown fourth quarter leads, it's like, well, it's not just like a switch flips in that fourth quarter. You're like, oh, hey, here we go. He said, like, what are you doing in the first three quarters, right? Like, it's about them just, he said, it's more about like, you're not doing your fundamentals and this kind of slips for you. It's not like necessarily a switch, which I thought actually was very interesting perspective on everything. But like, that's the type of mindset that I loved. And, he mentioned the relationship he already has with some of the front seven guys and, Travis Jones and Matabike, and even some of the guys who weren't in the building or aren't in the building anymore, like a Calais Campbell, et cetera. Like those are all really, like those are guys he built relationships with. But he said, he's excited to work with a lot of other guys too. Talked about that on the lounge and a bit during this press conference as well. But, I think that to me, getting a guy in that shares, because that was the thing Jesse talked about, was sharing a vision, right? Guys that know their X's and O's, but also are able to connect with the players and go out there, give 110% while also being able to, make an impact with what they're doing. A coordinator doesn't have to call plays to make an impact. I mean, we saw that firsthand with Declan Doyle in Chicago. I guess not firsthand, but like we heard it firsthand from Declan Doyle with his experience in Chicago. Ben was the guy calling the plays, Ben Johnson, but Declan Doyle had a huge hand in everything. I think that Anthony Weaver and Jesse Minter can work really, really well together. And to me, with the talent that they already have, and you add a couple of key pass rushers to this defense, I like where they're going because, yes, the roster is set right now. No, absolutely not. But I think if you give him a guy or two, and with the connections, again, like, is that a Bradley Chubb? Is that a Jalen Phillips? Guys he worked with in Miami as a D coordinator there for 2 seasons. It's great. And I think the energy that he has is contagious. He's very confident. And, you can tell that, like, when he speaks, he's confident in what he knows he can bring to the table, and something that, like the collaboration that Jesse Minter knows he can have with Weaver and the collaboration that Weaver knows he can have with Minter, like it's a mutual respect there already. And you can tell, like, this has only been a thing for a couple of weeks now. And you think that, oh, well, Weaver, he wanted a head coaching job, so he's going to, oh, is that going to be a problem? No, like you can tell that Weaver is genuinely grateful to be in Baltimore. He's genuinely grateful for the opportunity. I mean, he talked about like the 25th year anniversary of the 2000 team, and like the part of his answer of him wanting to be part of a group that's forever. He's hungry for that, right? It's not just about the players here at all. The players want to win the Super Bowl badly and the coaches are just there to help them do it. No, these coaches have dreams and aspirations of that too. And with Weaver being a former player, him wanting to get that hardware, him wanting to be a part of something special. I mean, you look at what Weaver brings to this, I think it's going to be great, especially because last year in Miami, it was very weird for Weaver. That year was just weird. It was weird for Miami. But in 2024, his first season, that defense was really good. And him overseeing it, being able to work with Jesse, and the confidence that he has and that we saw from him over the course of this press conference and in his answers, and the fact that he's fired up and excited and ready to go and talking about certain things, certain players, both on the lounge interview and today, I'm so fired up. Again, I dismissed the possibility of Anthony Weaver being a guy that they could actually bring in the building, because I thought that, again, if he didn't get a head coaching job, all right, well, he's probably going to want to call plays, right? Well, I'm sure he probably wanted to, but the opportunity in Baltimore, the thing that I love about Weaver is that he loves the Ravens. He loves Baltimore, talking about just how awesome it is to be in Baltimore. And, like the quote, every time I've stepped in this place, it's been special. The first time he talked about getting the Ravens DC job, he said it just means a little more. And he said, when you're the coordinator of the Ravens, feels like you're the coordinator of the NFL, which I think is something crazy. But, it's that prestigious of a job. And he truly, it's not like, oh, man, all right, well, I'm here. I'm just going to propel myself to a head coaching job. Yeah, he wants a head coaching job. And I don't blame him, because he deserves it. But he also really, believes that this is an opportunity for him to try to win a championship, and not just to propel himself to a head coaching job, but to truly have a great year or great years, however long it lasts in Baltimore. Hopefully it is a long time, but also hopefully Weaver gets an opportunity to be a head coach. He definitely has earned it and has deserved it. And I think with a great year, if the Ravens turn around and have a great year on defense, it could be a one and done situation for Weaver. But it also could be, he has a couple of great defensive years, and, maybe he does unfairly get passed up again. And I would hate that for him, because I want him to go on and get that opportunity. But, at the same time, it'd be great to have him kind of anchor multiple different great Ravens units over the course of his, however long it is, third stop in Baltimore. So I'm pumped about what Weaver brings to the table. And I think it's going to be a really fun defense. Fun offense, fun defense, and I think it's fun special teams as well. Coming up, we'll talk about Anthony Levine, what he had to say about his experience getting this job, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Everyone to experience the NBA Finals live and in person. FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can you pick your cash, or can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use a profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Continuing on, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Wednesday edition of the show. Thanks again for being here. A lot of content still to come on Locked On Ravens today as well. We have this instant reaction show at the morning show, but we're also again going to have our Locked On Ravens PM or check-in or mini or whatever it's going to be called. And I'll try to finalize that before the end of the week. We'll have that at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll also have the squad show, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and a lot of content again with this Ravens team as they enter a really important offseason. You can follow me over on social media, CashRecord34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. And also, if you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan or wants daily Ravens coverage and content, be sure to send them over our way on Locked On Ravens. But let's talk Anthony Levine Sr. Didn't talk a lot over the course of this press conference. Would have loved to hear more from him, because I love this hire personally. Actually, I think he got cut off by somebody when he was answering. He was going on for a little while about some of the guys that he's worked with and played with that, he either still talks to or has helped him along the way. He mentioned guys like Jamil McClain, and, said Marcus Peters was a guy that he talks with, and all those guys. So I think he got cut off in one of those answers. But like you can genuinely tell how appreciative he is to in this position. But, something that Jesse Minter mentioned, and again, I want to talk a lot more about what Jesse had to say. I will talk about it a little bit in this final part of the show here, as well as just over the course of the next couple of days and weeks, as I want to focus more on the coordinators this time. But we'll get to Jesse. Jesse's like, look, he wasn't just handed this opportunity. Like, he earned it. Like, all those guys up there earned it, right? But for a guy like Levine, he worked his way up, being the guy in Baltimore for so many years, establishing his role there as a player, trying it out in scouting, going to Tennessee for a couple of years and working there, and then coming back to Baltimore and then getting this. Like, he worked his way up the ladder. It wasn't like he retired and the day he retired, he all of a sudden became the special teams coordinator. No, like he earned it, and you could tell that he definitely, like, he has a fire and a passion, and his experiences as a player, I think, it's really going to shape what he does is this coordinator. We had Nick Moore on the squad show last week on Wednesday, and he talked a lot about Levine being a older school type of guy, and really wants the best out of his guys, and the connector that he is. And that's something that actually Levine talked about Jesse Minter, because Levine was in the room with Jesse when Jesse was with Baltimore the first time. And Levine said, quote, "He did a great job of connecting with us. He also told us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear." And that's something I believe Levine's probably going to take into his experience, right? Like, he shouted out Keandre Jackson for being there and supporting him. And that's something that's huge, because you can tell the impact that Levine, obviously he had it as a player in the organization, right? But like, you can tell the impact that these younger guys feel from Anthony Levine. And I really do believe that with the experiences, for example, like with Chris Horton and what he was able to do, you have a guy that is prepared for this moment. It's like Declan Doyle, right? Where is the experience there as a coordinator in terms of calling plays and all that? No, but he's been shaped by guys like Sean Payton and Ben Johnson. And those are all things that, like, it's prepared Declan for the opportunity. And I think for Levine, it's kind of in the same boat, where it's like, yeah, he's never been a special teams coordinator before, but he worked under a special teams guy, and John Harbaugh played under a special teams guy, and John Harbaugh was a part of great special teams unit, Jerry Rosberg, and he, mentioning Horton and whatnot. But I think it was really special. I mean, I'm sure it was special for Levine, but obviously it was cool for me to hear, like, oh, hey, Keandre's in the building. And part of that, being in a member of the secondary and a big special teams contributor. I mean, he came on really strong for the Ravens last season, and I'm sure a lot of that did have to do with Anthony Levine. Jesse Minter called him the face of Baltimore special teams, which is such a high honor for a guy in Anthony Levine, who came after being cut and established himself and carved out a really nice career. And again, like, I talked about this with Nick and with just the show in general. I don't think there's a more perfect guy for some of these younger players who are maybe later round draft picks or undrafted, to look at their coordinator and to see Anthony Levine standing across from him or sitting across from him and being like, you lived this of grinding and establishing yourself as a core member of this special teams unit, grinding out a career for yourself, a living for yourself. I think that's perfect. And that's something that these players can relate to, especially because we know the Ravens, they like finding those diamonds in the rough that can play special teams. Well, now you're learning from one of those guys. And I think that's really, really cool. So I'm excited for what Levine brings to the table. And again, like with all three of these guys, you could tell that they're aligned in their vision with Minter. The standard is there. And that's what I want to see, right? Where, the last year with the Ravens and, with everything that happened with Harbaugh and the losing and the injuries and all that, it just felt like at times, are they aligned? How aligned is this team? Feels like so far they are really aligned. And again, like we heard from Declan Doyle, that he talked with Lamar for about an hour during the interview process. And, Weaver talked about a lot of different things about how he's ready to take on this challenge. Obviously, Levine, mentioning what playing for Minter is like and who he is. Like, all of these guys are going to be really exciting to watch grow, honestly. Like, again, Weaver's the guy that has the most experience out of the bunch in terms of like coordinator coaching. I mean, he was a coordinator in Houston, obviously in Miami as well. But I don't know, like, there's just something about this group that feels special to me. And I hope that I'm right. I feel like I am, but I really hope that I'm right about it. And, again, like Minter setting the standard, I thought throughout the press conference was really important. Minter mentioned it off Aowe a little bit and kind of opened up about how they kind of freed him up to be gave him a little freedom as a pass rusher a little bit, created an environment for him that he, helped him play with a lot of confidence. So again, like that's the thing, is creating confident units for these guys, like understanding. And that's something Declan Doyle talked about during the lounge interview we had yesterday, is like, man, you're talking about a situation where they're not going out there on the field and being a part of plays. Declan Doyle said he's taking 0 snaps next season. That's how many snaps he's taken. 0. It's about the coaches giving the players as many details as possible. Is what Declan talked about, as many details as possible to perform at the highest level, giving them a toolbox. And so I think with all of these guys, that's what you have, right? It's a toolbox. So I'm really excited for it. And yeah, I see people in the chat talking about Keandre Jackson and what he brings to the table, is an undrafted guy and an underdog in a sense. Like, yeah, I'm excited to see what Levine can do with these guys who are walking the same path, or at least trying to walk the same path that he walked, because he is the ultimate example of what it can be when, you go out there and grind for it. That's what Levine did over the course of his career. And, I'm not saying that other special teams coordinators don't have that effect because they haven't walked in those shoes and maybe didn't play football or whatnot. But I think it does mean something coming from a guy that actually did it. So I'm really excited for this. And I think that for Baltimore, the start of a new era, and I've talked about it, like I feel so much more confident in this team right now than I did after that Pittsburgh loss. Like I genuinely didn't think any of this was going to happen. I thought they were going to run it back with John Harbaugh and, everybody was going to come back, maybe a coordinator change, who knows? But like we have seen them commit, Steve Bisciotti committed to, we're going to get this thing right. And, this head coaching process, these coordinator searches, it's all felt like a joint effort to get this team back. And again, that's the thing, right? Where that's what Jesse Minter talked about, and some of these guys talked about. It's like the season last year was not what the standard has been, and it was a disappointing year. But the goal is obviously to have that be a one-off thing and to not have that happen again, and to make sure that the standards that are created on the outside, they want to create their standards and hold those guys to high standards, hold themselves to high standards. And with Lamar Jackson and this team and what it has been over the course of his franchise history, I think that's all anybody's asking for. It's just making sure that last year does not happen again. And again, I don't know what happened in that locker room last season. I don't know what the deal was, who was talking to who wasn't talking to who, how much drama there was. But it just feels like it's been a nice like wave of like refreshing of, okay, like the drama feels to be just washed away, and all the losing energy feels to be washed away. And you can tell that like it's a difference of like Jesse Minter and all these guys are like, they're going to tell you like it is. And it felt like over the end of the Harbaugh era, that's not what it felt like. It felt like it was just John Harbaugh was saying stuff and it wasn't even true. Like we were seeing it wasn't true. Just the refreshingness in how Jesse talks and acknowledges things and says, look, these are the things we want to do. And we're going to have those standards. And that's a non-negotiable, right? And that's kind of like what Declan Doyle talked about with his non-negotiables. If you're not doing that, well, it's not going to be good. So I'm excited for it. I'm super pumped. And, the fact that they want to make their own journey. Jesse talked about Mike Macdonald. He was asked about Mike Macdonald in that situation a little bit and said that they're looking forward to creating their own journey. So it's look, with a new coaching staff, you have to always, I guess, temper expectations. But the Ravens are in a really unique spot where, like, you have to do that, yes. But at the same time, like, we know that this team's goal is to win a Super Bowl. And, some of these guys are not getting any younger. Lamar, he's not old yet by any stretch of the imagination. He's not 34, but he's also not 24. So you have to capitalize. Derrick Henry, he takes great care of his body, but you have to capitalize on these guys and them being in their primes, or, for Henry, how long is his prime going to last here? Like you have to take advantage of that. And I think this coaching staff sets this team up for a ton of success. But that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to this instant reaction edition of the show. On the web, hit like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form 4 or 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up, we will have our Locked On Ravens PM episode at 6 p.m. Eastern time, as well as a Locked On Ravens squad show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and a regular 6 a.m. episode tomorrow morning. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.